You ever walk into your own home and feel like a stranger? That's how it started for me. One day it was just me and Dad. The next, a woman I barely knew was rearranging the walls, literally. I didn't plan to pick a fight, but when family photos disappear overnight, you gotta ask, who decides what memories matter? Dad got married last month. It was a small backyard wedding, kind of rushed if you ask me, but he looked happy. Genuinely happy. I guess that's all that really matters, right? Her name's Angela, and for the past 3 years, she and Dad had been doing the long-distance thing. Phone calls, weekend visits, you know the drill. I never really got to know her during that time. She'd smile and wave when she was in town, sometimes bring cookies or something polite like that. But she was always just visiting. That changed fast. A week after the wedding, she moved in. It was like flipping a switch. One day it was our old place, filled with the quiet familiarity of childhood and the kind of clutter that builds up when nobody's trying to impress anybody. The next, there were new rugs, different curtains, candles everywhere, and Angela's presence just soaking into the walls. She didn't waste time making the place feel like hers. I didn't say much at first. I figured, okay, new chapter, new start. I'm 17. I can keep my head down until summer, then I'm out. I've been saving up for a move of my own. I wasn't trying to make waves. But then one morning, as I was pouring cereal, I noticed the photo of my mom and me at the lake gone. At first, I thought maybe it fell or got moved for cleaning. But then I looked around. All of them were gone. Every picture of my mom, my real mom, Lydia, was off the walls, out of the frames, vanished like they'd never been there in the first place. I asked Dad about it, and he got that guilty look he wears when he knows something's gonna upset me. He said Angela felt uncomfortable with my mom's photos still being up. Said it didn't feel like her home with another woman's memories everywhere. I think those were her exact words. She wanted to feel like this was her house now, like she wasn't in someone else's shadow. Who decides which memories are allowed to stay and which get boxed up? Why is it always the new person who gets to rewrite the room? Dad tried to soften the blow by telling me I could take whatever photos I wanted before they went into storage, that they'd just gather dust anyway. I could tell he thought he was being reasonable, and maybe to him, he was. But something about it felt wrong. Cold. Like we were packing away a part of my mom's life just to make room for Angela's comfort. So I said fine, and I took every single one. Not just the framed ones. I took the ones in drawers, the ones in albums, the little Polaroids stuck to the side of the fridge. All of them. I wasn't going to let them sit in a box in the garage, forgotten and fading. I brought them to my grandparents' house, where I knew they'd be safe, respected, even. Do you think that was petty? Or was I just protecting what little I had left of her? Angela didn't say anything when I started taking a few, but when she realized I had taken all of them, that's when the real tension began. Her smile turned into something tighter, more measured, and the questions started. Not from Dad, from her. And man, that's when things really kicked off. Angela caught me coming back from my grandparents' place. I was setting down the empty box I'd used for the last few photo albums when she stepped into the hallway like she'd been waiting for me. You took all of them? She asked, her voice even, but not friendly. I shrugged. Yeah, Dad said I could. She blinked a couple times, like she hadn't expected me to be so blunt about it. I didn't realize you were going to clean the house out, she said. 1 or 2 made sense, but all? That just feels, she paused, looking for a word, a bit excessive. I looked at her for a second, trying to stay calm. Why does it bother you so much? They weren't yours. They're part of my family, my life. Why do you care how many I take? She crossed her arms. Because it feels like a big screw you to me. Like you're making some kind of statement. I scoffed. If you think me keeping photos of my mother is a screw you to you, maybe that says more about you than it does about me. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. But maybe she shouldn't have tried to rewrite my history, either. She stiffened, and that polite mask she always wore cracked a little. You're implying I would have thrown them away. That's insulting, wouldn't you? I asked, not yelling, not cursing yet. Just asking. If I hadn't taken them, would they really still be here a month from now? Or would they end up accidentally misplaced during one of your redecorating projects? That's when it hit the fan. She got loud. Said I was being disrespectful, cruel, hostile in her home. That's the phrase she used, her home. Not our home. Not your dad and I's home. Her home. And that's when I lost it. I didn't scream. But I didn't sugarcoat it either. Why is this your business at all? I said. You weren't here. You don't get to come in, toss everything that existed before you showed up, and act like we're supposed to pretend my mom didn't matter. Angela's jaw clenched. You're being rude. No, I said, staring her dead in the eye. I'm being honest. And if you're going to live here, maybe you should learn the difference. She stormed off after that and went straight to Dad. I could hear them talking in the living room, hushed but tense. A few minutes later, Dad came into my room, shut the door behind him, and just looked at me. She didn't mean anything by it, he said, running a hand over his face. Didn't mean anything by what? Wanting to erase Mom from the walls. He didn't answer that. Just sat down on the edge of my bed and sighed. She wants to feel like she belongs, he said quietly. Not like she's living in someone else's past. I nodded slowly. And I'm supposed to forget mine to make that easier for her. He didn't look at me, just stared at the floor. I get it, I really do. Starting over is hard. Blending families is hard. But losing someone, that doesn't just stop hurting because someone else wants to redecorate. What would you do if someone came into your home and tried to pack up your memories? Would you let them? Or would you fight for what matters? Because that's what this felt like. Not a photo argument. Not a teenage rebellion. A fight for the space my mom still deserves in the house she helped build. Even if only through the walls, the frames, the little smiles frozen in time. After that night, things at home got quieter, but not in a peaceful way. More like the kind of silence that settles in a room after a loud argument. Thick, tense, full of things unsaid. Angela stopped trying to talk to me. She walked past me like I was a tenant she barely tolerated, and honestly, I was fine with that. I didn't need fake smiles or forced small talk. But even Dad started acting different. Like he didn't know how to talk to either of us without picking sides. It's strange watching your own house turn into someone else's idea of a home. The living room used to have these throw blankets Mom knitted. Gone. The fridge used to have little magnets from road trips we took when I was younger. Gone too. She replaced them with those generic live, laugh, love ones from Target. The walls looked cleaner, sure, but colder too. Like a showroom. Why does making something yours mean erasing what was? I'd come home from school and head straight to my room. That became my safe zone. The last place that still felt untouched. I had one framed picture of Mom and me at my 5th birthday. Her in this blue sundress, holding my hand while I grinned with cake all over my face. I put it on my nightstand. Not because I needed a reminder. How could I forget her? But because it made me feel like she was still here somehow, still watching over me in a house that seemed to be slowly forgetting she ever existed. One evening, a couple weeks after the fight, I caught Angela looking in my room as she walked by. She paused, her eyes landing on the photo. I didn't say anything, just stared at her from my bed. Her mouth twitched, like she wanted to say something, but then she kept walking. Why couldn't she just let that one thing be? A few days later, Dad asked me to come outside and help him clean the garage. I figured maybe this was his way of trying to break the ice. But really, he just wanted to talk without Angela around. She's still upset, he said, not looking at me. So am I replied. He leaned on the workbench and let out a slow breath. She feels like you don't respect her. Like you're trying to keep her on the outside. I laughed, but it wasn't a funny laugh. She is on the outside. She married you. She didn't inherit my loyalty. Is that what this is about? He asked. Loyalty? I tossed a wrench into the drawer and turned to face him. This is about my mom. This is about walking into my own home and feeling like a stranger. This is about someone walking in and acting like the love you had before didn't count. He winced. I saw it in his eyes. Maybe he hadn't thought of it like that. Maybe he didn't want to. I loved your mother, he said quietly. I still do. But I'm also trying to move forward. I nodded. Then move forward. But not by pretending she never existed. That's the thing no one tells you about grief. It doesn't end when someone new enters the picture. You just carry it differently. You fold it up and tuck it into quieter corners of your heart. But you don't bury it just because someone else wants a blank slate. So I held my ground. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just told him what I needed. Keep her out of my memories, I said. She's your wife now, fine. But she's not my mom. And she doesn't get to decide what pieces of her I'm allowed to hold on to. He didn't say much after that. Just nodded slowly, like he finally understood what I was trying to protect. After that talk with Dad in the garage, things didn't exactly improve, but they settled. Like dust after a storm. He kept his distance from the tension between Angela and me, which I guess was his way of trying not to make things worse. But even silence can feel loud when you live with people who are quietly at war. Angela didn't bring up the photos again, but her energy changed. Passive-aggressive became her new default. If I left a dish in the sink, she'd sigh just loud enough for me to hear. If I came home late, she'd ask Dad if he was okay with me keeping odd hours. Little things. Petty things. The kind of stuff you learn to tune out when you know you're not welcome in someone's story. What got to me the most wasn't what she said, it was what she wasn't saying. Like she was waiting for me to break, to apologize, to crawl back and ask for some kind of truce. But I didn't. Because this wasn't just about a disagreement. It was about belonging. And I wasn't going to beg for a place in my own home. One night, I heard her crying. Through the thin walls, past the kitchen, down the hallway. She wasn't loud, but it was enough. I sat in the dark for a while, listening. I don't think she knew I could hear. Part of me felt bad, like maybe I'd pushed too hard. Maybe she really was trying to fit in, and I'd made her feel like an intruder. But then I thought about Mom, and how she never got the chance to say how she felt. How she never got to see me graduate, or teach me how to drive, or tell me how to deal with stuff like this. Would she want me to forgive Angela? To meet her halfway? Or would she want me to fight for the pieces of her that were left? What do you do when you're caught between honoring someone who's gone and surviving with the people still here? I thought about asking my grandma Mom's mom. She's the one keeping the photos for me. She never liked to speak badly of anyone, but I know she never warmed up to Angela either. Still, she always told me grace and strength weren't opposites. You could stand firm and still be kind. So I tried something different. The next morning, I came down early and made coffee. Sat at the kitchen table, waiting. When Angela came in, surprised to see me up, I just said, "There's some coffee if you want it." She hesitated, then poured herself a cup. We didn't say much. But the silence was different this time, softer. Maybe a crack in the ice. After a few minutes, I said, "I'm not trying to be your enemy." She looked at me, eyes tired. "You've got a funny way of showing it." I nodded. "Fair enough. I'm just trying not to forget someone who mattered." She didn't respond right away, just stared into her mug. Then she whispered, "I'm not trying to erase her. I just want to feel like I can exist here too." And that I understood. That moment didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the tension or bring back the photos. But it was real. And sometimes, that's enough to build on. After that morning in the kitchen, things didn't transform overnight. Angela and I didn't suddenly become friends, and the house didn't return to the way it used to feel. But something subtle shifted, like a thread pulled just enough to loosen the knot we'd been tangled in. We gave each other space, but not out of anger anymore. Out of respect. Some days were easier than others. There were still awkward moments. Times when I caught her hesitating before speaking to me, or when I'd step into a room and feel that old tension return for just a second. But it passed quicker than before. Like we both agreed, without saying it, that this wasn't going to be a war zone forever. A few weeks later, Dad surprised me. We were sitting outside one evening, the kind of quiet spring night where the air feels soft and everything smells like grass and memory. He cleared his throat, then handed me a small box. Inside were 3 framed photos of Mom, ones I hadn't even realized were missing. She kept them, he said, tucked them in a drawer. Said she didn't feel right throwing them out. I held the frames in my hands, my throat tightening. One of them was the picture from my 3rd grade science fair, where Mom stood behind me holding my foam solar system with the proudest look on her face. Another was from the last Christmas we had together. She thought maybe you'd want them back, Dad added. And just like that, I knew we were all trying. In our own flawed, human way, we were each finding space for each other, even in a house filled with ghosts. How do you share a home with someone new without letting go of the ones who came before? Maybe the answer isn't in choosing sides. Maybe it's in carving out space for both. And protecting what matters while still making room for what's next. A few days later, I brought the science fair photo out from my room and set it quietly on the hallway shelf. Just one photo. No announcement. No confrontation. But it stayed there. No one touched it. No one moved it. That small act meant more than any apology. I still plan to move out this summer, like I always intended. This house isn't mine anymore, not really. But before I go, I wanted to make sure my mom hadn't been erased. That the love she gave, the life she built, still echoed through these walls. Angela and I may never have a perfect relationship. And honestly, I'm okay with that. She's not my mom, and she never will be. But she's trying. And maybe, just maybe, so am I. In the end, this wasn't just about photos. It was about memory, respect, family, the messy kind you don't choose but still find yourself trying to make sense of. And sometimes, the only way to move forward is to carry the past with you, not like a burden, but like a light you refuse to let go out. So no, I don't regret taking those photos. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd take every single one. I really want to hear from you, honestly. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have taken the photos too, or tried to let it go? Have you ever felt like someone was rewriting your story without asking? Share your thoughts in the comments. It helps more than you know. And if this story touched something in you, please like the video. It tells me I'm not alone in this. Subscribe if you want to be part of a space where real stories and real feelings matter. Thank you, truly, for listening all the way through.